And then I want to ask you a question about school libraries, and particularly perceptions of school libraries, because we continue to have this distressing gap between the research on impacts of good school library programs, and particularly the impact of the collaborative behaviors of the qualified teacher librarian, and at the other end, an invisibility problem with regard to that issue. What does the research tell us about how that issue is viewed by decision makers?
Well, I'm going to approach the question a little differently. I think that school libraries are a case study of what could happen to all types of libraries. We talk about a library ecology and how what happens in one corner of our field affects all the others. And the reality is we don't believe that, or we would have been advocating for school libraries long ago. Instead, public libraries were willing to step in and provide services to schools. Academic libraries started to offer programs in information literacy, which hadn't been so necessary before when there were stronger school libraries. So we're willing to make accommodations. We're not willing to address the issue, straight on. So I would say that in my experience, there have been teacher librarians who money just seems to follow them. They change schools, they change school districts, and within a relatively short period of time, they've got support, they've got more time, they've got resources. Well, how did that happen? How did that happen? So I think there are a couple things here. At the broader level, the impact of teacher librarians and school libraries on student achievement is well documented, and that's the message that teacher librarians use. Well, that message doesn't resonate. In fact, there's lots of examples of where those studies have been done, particularly in the state of Colorado. 3 times they've been done. That's where they started, and support for school libraries has gone down. So clearly the message, isn't the issue. I think that if you start to look at the perception of the administrator, we can first of all say that we talk about the decline in school libraries when in fact there's been no decline. Every school still has an area with resources that they call a school library. So we say that there's a decline in school libraries, and people don't see that. What the decline is in the allocation of time for teacher librarians to provide professional service. And then, of course, we're into the whole self-serving mentality. So if you look at that research and unpack it, to use that expression, you find that there are 2 things that really make a difference to student achievement and really make a difference to the perception of administrators. First is collaboration with classroom colleagues as a teaching partner, and the second is the provision of informal staff development for our colleagues around new resources, new approaches, and so on. Where those 2 things are in place, not only is there better support for teacher librarians, but there is also a stronger effect, a stronger correlation on student achievement. So I would say if we were serious in the school library community about wanting support for school libraries, what we would in fact do is insist on collaboration. We would insist on putting out what best practices. We would insist on having in-depth programs at our conferences so people could do it better and hold our members accountable for those things. But we don't. So when you look at what teacher librarians do and the view of administrators, the reality is that they don't collaborate. Now, I can hear a lot of people getting angry. I collaborate. We do these things. Well, of course, you may do that. But there's lots of studies to show that the majority of teacher librarians do not. So you can't expect support when we know, again, going back to our own research and reading it and acting on it, we know it makes a difference, and we don't hold our members accountable for that. And we should. We simply should. So I would say that there's issues around messaging, there's issues around not holding people accountable, and making sure that we're providing support and training for people to be able to do the things they should be doing, and then moving forward in those lines. The other thing is, it goes back to a comment I made earlier, we don't understand the world of the decision maker. Art teachers have research on how they make a difference to student achievement. Music teachers have research on how they make a difference to student achievement. Physical education teachers have research on how they make a difference to student achievement. I mean, the school is so complex that many things make a difference. In our own case, we know we make a difference when these specific behaviors are demonstrated. So let's hold people accountable we're demonstrating those behaviors, and through our associations, make sure there's adequate support and training to enable our members to do those things. And I think we'd have a much stronger case. Now, there's no question that it's more complicated. There are union contracts, there's limited resources, and so on. But those core fundamental elements are not in place, and it makes it very difficult to advocate as a consequence. It is not that administrators are stupid. It is not that they don't care. Sometimes they don't know, I give you that. But the reality is they're looking at what is best for the kids in their building with the money they have available. And if they don't see the things that are important and that are valued by teachers, not by kids necessarily, by teachers, then we've got a real problem.